and welcome back to Astrology with Erin on Awakening Airwaves. I'm your host and astrologer, Erin, and I'm so glad you're here for the June 2026 astrology forecast. Each month, we take a look at the movements of the planets, the larger stories they're telling, and how those shifts show up in our lived experience so we can navigate change with greater awareness. June is a month of transition, acceleration, and changing perspective. We're moving deeper into the new collective atmosphere created by Uranus, now in Gemini, alongside Saturn and Neptune in Aries and Pluto in Aquarius. There's a strong emphasis this month on communication, movement, learning, and adapting quickly to shifting circumstances. At the same time, Mercury and Jupiter moving through Cancer for much of the month remind us to stay connected to what feels emotionally grounding and meaningful as so much continues changing around us. I'm joined today by my friend and colleague, Casey Sampson of Aligned Astrology. Casey is a certified yoga instructor, meditation facilitator, and Hellenistic astrologer. Drawing from each of these disciplines, he helps others cultivate greater connection with themselves and their path through the wisdom of astrology, mindfulness, and self-reflection. You can find his links in the description below. I'll also be posting horoscopes on my individual YouTube channel, as well as Instagram and Facebook again this month, so be sure to follow me at Astrology with Erin on all 3 platforms so you don't miss your sign. I also want to invite you to sign up for my mailing list at astrologywitherin.com, where I send monthly updates about my work, forecasts, and offerings. My books are currently open for one-on-one consultations for June, and you can find all that information on my website linked below. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps support my work and allows these conversations to reach more people. All right, there's a lot of astrology to cover this month, and I'm looking forward to exploring it with Casey. So let's dive in. Hello, and welcome back to Astrology with Erin, and welcome to your June 2026 astrology forecast. I am joined today by my friend and colleague, Casey Sampson of Aligned Astrology, and we are going to walk through the month of June. Casey, will you please introduce yourself to our listeners and tell them where to find you?
Hi, everybody. Like Aaron just said, my name's Casey. You can find me at aligned-astrology.com. You can find me on Instagram at aligned_astrology. You can find me on YouTube at Aligned Astrology with Casey Sampson. I record the full moons, the new moons, and I'll do different planetary aspects. So this is actually going to be my first time with Aaron doing a monthly forecast. So I'm excited to do this and see how it feels. Maybe you get some of these from me.
I'm excited to have you here, and we will have Casey's links in the description box below in case you decide you want to work with Casey. You're open for one-on-one consultations, right, Casey?
Yep, absolutely. My schedule is open. I wear many hats right now as a yoga instructor and an astrologer, and doing a bunch of different things in those realms. So I have the time for readings. So please book, but they'll fill up quick.
Okay, excellent, and good to know. All right, well, before we dive in sort of to the intricacies of June, Casey, what do you think of the month as a whole, and how are you enjoying Uranus and Gemini?
Uranus and Gemini is quite a shaky energy to begin with. I feel like it's bringing everything up to speed very quickly. I spoke about in one of my recent videos how technology is showing itself with AI. Like it's
Mhm.
becoming more clear to us at first when we experienced it last summer when Uranus first moved into Gemini. It was like AI showing itself, but we thought it was real. They weren't labeling these different videos they were creating as creators, but now we're getting more of an awareness of AI and how people are actually using it. But I think this overarching energy that the month is going to carry is by the connections of the outer planets, Pluto in Aquarius, which is going to be retrograde, of course. We have Neptune in Aries, and then Uranus in Gemini. So I think it's a collective flavor of new impulse, new structures being put in place. But I think that the inner planets, the traditional planets, are going to be making their rounds, and we get to experience it in our own personal lives thanks to the quicker moving planets this month.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Um, yeah, as you mentioned, we got previews of all of these outer planets and their new signs over last summer, 2025. And the AI thing is really interesting. I think last summer we started to see it, but it wasn't clear exactly what it could do and what it couldn't do. And I think we're starting to get a clearer picture of both its capabilities and its limitations, which is interesting. But I'm sure there are a lot more surprises to come. And as you alluded to, as these faster moving planets, the traditional seven, make aspects to this outer planet formation, I think we're going to see it show up not only around us in the collective, but more and more so, we'll see what it means for our personal lives too, don't you think?
Certainly. I'm excited to actually experience it as opposed to being left in the dark or walking through this fog of Neptune in Aries.
Right. And guessing as to what it's going to be. We have some other big moves coming in June that I will just sort of allude to before we dive in. But we have Chiron entering Taurus for the first time since 1984. Um, and of course, Jupiter will be changing signs as well. And that's probably one of the bigger movements.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited for the Jupiter moving into the sign of Leo, into my 10th house as a Scorpio rising. So it's going to be very interesting to see what goes on in a career, what comes to surface. It's been quite an experience having Jupiter move through the sign of Cancer as well. I had some opportunities to leave the country and do a lot of different traveling, find
Oh,
some new
nice.
teachers in my life that have shifted me into a different direction. So we'll see what Jupiter and Leo brings to the world,
Yeah.
to our lives.
Yeah, Cancer's your ninth house. It's my 10th. So I'm coming out of that 10th house Jupiter transit. And yeah, it's been really busy. It's been really, really busy for me. Lots of great opportunities, especially to put myself out there that I've tried to take advantage of. But I have filled my plate up quickly. So I guess that will be
Mm.
my one caution to my Scorpio rising friends as you head into this transit. Okay, why don't I go ahead and share the chart and let's take a look at it. So this is our chart for June 1st. And really the first thing that we have happening is, and it's not quite in the chart yet, but Mercury will be changing signs from his home domicile in Gemini into Cancer. So this, I think, Mercury's losing dignity here, and becoming probably much more emotional. Mercury feels more than thinks, I think, in these water signs, and in Cancer, and it gets much more intuitive and subjective. And I think to sort of set the stage, the other things that this, implies, other than just Mercury changing signs, is what he will start to do is apply immediately to a square with Neptune here at the beginning of Aries. And of course, he will eventually square Saturn as well. And this year in 2026, Mercury is retrograding in these water signs. So though he's not yet in shadow here, it's something we will expect down the road. He will spend quite a bit of time in Cancer. What do you think about that, Casey?
In
What's there to
regards
say
to
about that?
the planet Mercury moving into the sign of Cancer.
Hmm.
I've been thinking about it moving out of its own dignity and into the sign of Cancer, becoming sort of debilitated. Of course, it's not its actual sign of debilitation, but it's moving into a water sign where it's considered to be mute. So it's like our conversation with people might not necessarily land. Our emotions might take the forefront. So when we're in a connection with people, we lead with emotions versus logic versus our intellect. It's
Hmm.
with that sextile aspect to or not sextile but the square aspect to Neptune. It's like we're even more confused, like we're walking through that haze of an experience. People are hearing what we have to say, but they're misconstruing it. They're taking it in a different way. So maybe what we think is going to be beneficial might actually be harmful or not even what we want it to be in the end. When we think about that planet Saturn, which will reach the sextile with Mercury, it's like our which is also a debilitated planet in the sign of Aries. We get an opportunity to experience more confusion, or I guess you could say the lack of discipline, because when Saturn is in the sign of Aries, it which is the planet of boundaries and structure, it is weakened. So maybe we're trying to make connections and put things in order, but it doesn't have the structure that we needed to. It's not mature enough to start off strong. So maybe we have to take a bit more time to be more precise and slow down. And maybe that comes back to our forefront when Mercury goes retrograde at the end of the month.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't love this Mercury in Cancer square Neptune because I do think it feels like confusion and being emotional about it, hurt feelings around confusion, potential disappointment, especially as Mercury squares Saturn. As a Libra rising person where Saturn is exalted, yeah, I haven't loved Saturn in Aries. I do not like it when things are unfair. And if Saturn is rules, leadership, structure, it's exalted in Libra for a reason because things are balanced.
Hmm.
Fairness is a priority. And it's just not, and life is just not fair, and especially right now. And I think Saturn in Aries has a lot to say about that. And of course, Saturn is always asking for realism, for us to be realistic, for us to be enduring, for us to have stamina. And that's not easy in the Aries part of our charts and lives where we're accustomed to things going fast. And that's, what we want to have happen. And it's just not right now. I do think the sun sextile to Saturn really around the same time, that perfects June 2nd, is interesting and potentially stabilizing during this time. It's certainly not hurting this configuration any. And the sun is here in Gemini, ruled by Mercury. So I think, ideally, I think sextiles a lot of the time they require some effort and, looking for opportunities. So perhaps around this time we can find opportunities to stabilize, to maybe take the long view, to be innovative, and to look for sort of options to yeah, to be more realistic and to think about the future, especially with Uranus there in Gemini with the sun. So those are kind of my thoughts about that. I think what it's leading into is really lovely, though. This Venus Jupiter conjunction, which perfects June 9th. What do you think about that, Casey?
In regards to the Venus Jupiter conjunction, I could say that's probably one of our most beneficial aspects of the year in Cancer, because Jupiter's exalted. And even though we have a lot of debilitated planets as we move through June, with Mars in Taurus and Mercury losing its dignity moving into Cancer, with Venus and Jupiter connecting, we come into some very positive connections that can nourish us and provide us with support in this month. But it's also important to recognize, even though this is a very benefic or positive aspect, the negative sides of things. We can become very indulgent. We can be overexcited with pleasure and maybe miss the benefit that we can get out of this one, the positive alliances that may come, the growth and the nourishment of relationships that may come. But we might fall more into the pleasure seeking side of this if we've been challenged by the other things going on this month.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I mean, as you alluded to, both Venus and Jupiter are pretty well dignified in Cancer, the sign of the moon here. It's giving goddess energy, that's for sure. Venus has triplicity dignity in Cancer, and Jupiter, of course, is in his exaltation. The one thing that I've noticed about Jupiter in Cancer, yes, it's great. He's exalted there. But it is the sign of the crab, and it is very protective, right? It's like, oh, my, inner gushiness,
Mm,
must protect, and can be somewhat tribal, and prioritizing the comfort zone, and prioritizing, home, family, domestic matters is great. But growth, of course, does not occur inside the comfort zone, right? And so, emotional expansion, and perhaps that's what's happening, with Jupiter and Cancer, is perhaps it's more inner and emotional expansion, and perhaps we'll see it burst out into the world more when he enters the fire sign of Leo. But yeah, I've noticed it to be very emotionally protective. I think it's interesting for sure that this is really around the same time. It's the next day on the 10th that we have Mercury perfecting this square to Saturn. And at the same time, all this is going on, the moon is here in early Aries with Neptune. So it's like giving dreamy, emotional,
mm,
but reality is setting in here too. There is
right.
some call to um look at the reality of a situation, which with Saturn in his fallen Aries, like we mentioned, is probably not ideal or easy or quick. um so I think this might be a time of emotional expansion that requires real commitment, that's potentially going to take longer than what we would prefer. So it'll be interesting, I think, to see how our personal relationships are developing around this time. There might be some serious conversations happening, emotional conversations. But I think my advice would be not to avoid that,
I would agree
not to
totally.
go for escapism. But yeah, to ask ourselves what nourishes us, and what is the difference between comfort and avoidance? Where is that line? So we make sure that we're not stepping over it. Yeah. Anything else to add to that before we move on?
Yes, for the when we talk about Jupiter and Venus in the sign of Cancer, when we talk about that emotional expansion, the the growth of that connection in our relationships, if we incorporate the aspect of the square from Saturn to Mercury, I think that this is when the time comes to where we might not be able to be understood in that conversation because the emotions are taking the forefront. So we could the conversation could be sort of blocked since this the square aspect carries the energy of Mars, like we can become angry, we can find a an attitude in a relationship or find difficult being understood or even expressing ourselves properly. So maybe that is the side of things that shows itself even through this very positive conjunction.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I think it'll become really easy to become emotionally reactive, um, or avoidant. It might be easier to sort of avoid these serious or difficult conversations, and as you said, sort of self-indulge, in escapism or whatever, that means. That's gonna vary, chocolate, movies,
Hmm.
whatever, pick your poison. Um, so yeah, that'll be the challenge. That'll be the challenge to sort of hold ourselves accountable. I think that's the other thing that Saturn is doing in Aries is asking us all to be like personally accountable. Um, so yeah, I mean, I don't think it'll be an easy time. I think it could be a fruitful one though, if handled skillfully. So that'll be the challenge for all of us for sure.
Yes, indeed.
All right, and moving on, we have Venus leaving Cancer then and entering Leo. Um, I don't dislike Venus in Leo. She is what we would call peregrine here, I suppose. She has no special dignity in this fire sign of Leo that's ruled by the sun. However, she can be very sort of showy, um, even if a bit overly dramatic. If you think of Venus as beauty and fashion, and the sign of Leo ruled by the sun is quite performative.
Hmm.
So she could be quite constructive here. I think it's interesting. The moon is conjoining Uranus at the same time. And of course, what she will quickly be doing from the sign of Leo, before very long, is sextiling Uranus, and then trining Neptune and opposing Pluto. So she is going to hit our entire outer planet formation from early Leo. What do you think about that, Casey?
I also don't mind when Venus is in the sign of Leo because it although it is moving away from a more nurturing love, leaving the sign of Cancer and moving into what we might see as a performative aspect of love or values or even vanity from time to time, it's important to notice the positive side of Venus and Leo. We can begin to show the values that we've cultivated from the nurturing love that just was recently expressed as Venus moved through the sign of Cancer. When Venus begins to make its rounds to all of the outer planets, I think it's going to give us the flavor of what Pluto, Neptune, and Uranus are trying to give us this year in regards to how we should begin to express our values, because these are air signs, and fire signs. It's how we think, how we communicate, how we take our actions, and the best place, in my opinion, to take our actions from is a strong set of values. So hopefully, with Venus here, we're learning what it means to express ourselves properly from a value-based standpoint in this new energy that these outer planets are forming for us.
Yeah, beautifully said. Yeah, I think that's most certainly right. These air and fire signs are much, faster moving. These are yang signs versus the yin of water and earth. And so they're more outward directed, right? So, yes, Venus and Leo can be, she can be attention seeking. That's for sure. If you want to upset a Venus and Leo native, ignore them. They don't take it very well. That's not their love language, right? But that said, Venus and Leo can be very, very warm, and you often, don't have to question where you stand with her. That's for
Mm.
certain. So if there was some sort of commitment or agreement arrived at through that serious conversation, which, like we said, may be a challenge, but if there was, perhaps you're sort of shouting it from the rooftops at this point, or starting to sort of walk the walk. It's being more outwardly expressed.
Yeah.
Um, So super interesting. So yes, so for dates, I just wanted to mention Venus goes into Leo on the 13th. She will sextile Uranus on the 15th, trine Neptune on the 16th, and oppose Pluto on the 17th. But in the midst of this, we are going to have our new moon in Gemini.
Mm-hmm.
So let's look at that. So there we have our new moon in Gemini, which of course we get one every year, but it is certainly not every year that we have Uranus co-present in Gemini. So I expect this most certainly to shake things up. I always think of Gemini, it's the sign of the twins, the Mercury ruled air sign. I always think of it as like the most mutable of the mutable. It is certainly a double-bodied sign about multiplicity, duality, and innovative thinking, even without Uranus there, but with Uranus there, even more so. So Gemini is very curious. I could see, new innovative ideas coming through here, mental reinvention, shifts in narrative, but yet ruled by this Mercury in Cancer, who, as we mentioned, is quite sensitive. And it's also conjunct the fixed star Capella. What are your thoughts, Casey, on this new moon?
Regarding a new moon, I always like to look at it at the dispositor. So having Mercury in the sign of Cancer, which is it makes it since it just lost its dignity, is sort of a weak ruler for this new moon. So I would say that it is a new beginning in the sign of Gemini, of course, but it is leading from an unstable or even unfamiliar foundation with the planet Uranus in the sign of Gemini. This is like the planet of revolution. I like to say this planet can rattle the cage. It is giving us a new experience that opens the door for us to go in either one direction or another. But since Mercury is in the sign of Cancer, maybe we'll be able to intuit or feel the direction that this new moon is leading us in, because new moons are a time of going inward. So hopefully, as opposed to looking at it from
Mhm.
a not so positive side of things, since Mercury's not able to intellectually prioritize things, but hopefully able to intuitively guide us in a proper direction.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I do love the fixed star Capella. I think it's a really lovely one. It is a very bright star, the brightest star in the constellation Auriga, and carries themes of intelligence, curiosity, movement, invention, and intellectual restlessness. So that's kind of the shadow side of it, is that it can be, like sort of too much
Mm,
intellectually, and become overwhelming. So that will be the caution, probably, especially with Uranus here, is to not, become sort of spun out, with
mm,
overthinking. Um, I think grounding ourselves is going to be really important during this time. But it's also associated with a chariot or charioteer, and a goat, specifically the goat that was nursemaid to Zeus or Jupiter. So there is something necessarily nurturing about this star, which I think blends really nicely with the Mercury in Cancer. And if you think about the chariot, like the tarot card, that is the card, the major arcana that's associated with the sign of Cancer. So I thought that was really interesting too. And it's about the tarot card of the chariot, is about sort of pointing ourselves in the right direction and trusting that the rest will come. Following our values and our intuition, sort of
mm.
internally pointing ourselves in the right direction. right. And allowing, I think, more than forcing. So that might be some good advice around this time. Like we said, the new moon is a seed planting time. So I think if we use this time to plant intentions um, around what we're intuitively sensing we want for the future, that might be the best use versus trying to like overthink, intellectualize, and force anything to happen right away. I can't help but notice the moon is void here too, really.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, and yeah, for those listening, void, of course, meaning she's not going to aspect any of the traditional seven planets before she changes signs. So that kind of implies, um, a period of stillness after this full moon. So yeah, there might be a bit of a waiting game, but I think all in all, the fixed star Capella really grants a blessing to this one. Yeah, because overall it's a quite positive star, and I think very fruitful things could come of this time. Yeah, and I would say, I guess, sort of my last words on it. If you do find yourself, it might be a good time to like journal quietly and things like this, because if you do find yourself experiencing sort of downloads or inspiration, it might be a great time to sort of write those ideas down, less maybe a time to act on them quite yet, um, but write them down and sort of let it simmer. And that might be the challenge. And like we said, really at the same time here, then we have Venus making these aspects to the outer planets.
Mm-hmm.
So that's super interesting. I kind of like her trying to Neptune, if we're sort of trying to dream something into being, as long as we can, avoid the less constructive parts of illusion. Um, like dreaming and imagining can be very constructive as long as we still have our feet on the ground. So if we did have some downloads, perhaps we're sort of imagining those into being at this time. And of course, the aspect that I sort of like the least here is her opposition to Pluto. We have the moon coming through at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that cute? We're really going to feel that one, is
Yes,
what that
indeed.
implies to me. Yeah, that could be that could be a point of disagreement around values, around power dynamics within a relationship. Um, yeah. What else do you think about that one, Casey?
In regards to the opposition between Venus and Pluto
Yeah.
conjoining the moon, yeah, I think it's gonna be quite intense personally. Because Pluto is opening the door for us to see things that we didn't necessarily recognize about ourselves. It's
Mhm.
helping us to see if our way of being, since Venus has just recently moved into the sign of Leo, if our values are really what we think they are. How are we expressing them to the people that we connect ourselves with, the groups of people that we're a part of? Are we are we showing ourselves in a negative way? Are we taking up too much space? And not to say that Venus and Leo takes up too much space, but it's important to recognize when enough is enough. When we're sharing ourselves, we need to make room for other people to receive what we have to offer. Since the moon is in a conjunction with Venus right now, correlated with our mind, our emotions, we might be a little bit expressive.
Yeah.
But I do feel like it's something that we need to be very mindful of as these things come to fruition, because in the moment, in this opposition, it can tend to be a lot.
It could be a lot. Yeah, I think, with, as you said, with Venus and Leo, it is very expressive, like, me, spotlight on me. And no shade to the Venus and Leo natives. Like the transit is different. When you're a whole human being, you have time to sort of integrate and accommodate energies within your life. But the transit can be quite potent, and there could be, yeah, for us Leonine people, I'll include myself in that because I have Sun and Mercury and Leo. There could be questions or things we need to answer for ourselves about how much space am I taking up? Am I considering where I fit into the greater whole of the collective? Am what I am doing, with my self-expression and with my values, how does that relate to the needs of the collective? How am I contributing? Um, and there might be a sort of confrontation around power dynamics and the power of the collective, versus the my power that I have in sort of influencing the world around me on the individual level. So these are things to consider. I think certainly it might not be an easy time. It does look intense, but it's potentially obsessive.
Hmm.
Um, And for those of us, if you do have personal relationships where there are unequal power dynamics, and things, especially if that, you've been trying to ignore that or sort of step around it, I think it's likely to sort of come to the surface around this time and require assessment, confrontation. Um, yeah, so it's best to sort of have a handle on that. Um, Deal with it early or walk away during this time because it could be quite explosive. These
Yeah.
oppositions and squares to Pluto kind of always have a tendency to do that.
Yeah, I would say that's the positive side of Pluto, even though it's like one of the strongest malefics in the zodiac. The positive side of Pluto is that it's going to show us what the issue is, and now we have an opportunity to make a decision on that. Maybe we do too much, and we see it doesn't feel good. The downside is that some people like that and want to keep those power dynamic for themselves and be the star of the show and step on everybody else. So maybe
Hmm.
we get an opportunity since the moon's conjoining Venus to have a heart and choose to be helpful in the situation.
Yes. Yep. We still have a lot of options around sort of how to handle this. We don't have to sit idly by and like let things explode. But you're right. I think, Pluto always, he's the lord of the underworld and he reveals things. He turns the earth over, so that things can be revealed. He does not shy away from confrontation. Um, yep. So yeah, it can be a positive. If things have been sort of stuffed under the rug, they're likely to come out around this time, certainly. So yeah, that's June 17th. You go by day.
Before we go forward, can we touch a bit more on the Venus sextile
Absolutely.
Uranus aspect? I know it's when we think about sextile aspects, they carry that Venusian energy, they're harmonious energy, but we can miss them if we are not paying
Mhm.
attention. They just move so fast, especially the planet Venus. But it can open a door for those sudden connections or those sudden inspirations. So we just need to be mindful that wherever we find ourselves happening to express ourselves with Venus in the sign of Leo, who's there? Who's receiving us? What connections can we make in these moments that can be beneficial at this time? But since it's once again a sextile aspect, that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be long lasting.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, sextiles you definitely sort of have to take advantage of. I was just noticing too while you were saying that Uranus is squaring the nodes around the same time. So that's really interesting too. I often look at squares to the nodes, so planets at what we would call the bending of the
Mm-hmm.
nodes, as a sort of crossroads or a decision point. So this could be a time of some real innovation and sort of future oriented thinking. And with Venus involved, perhaps this is questioning sort of like, how are you showing up in the world and what does that look like going forward? And how are you ready to innovate and change that, and potentially using things like communication and technology in order to do that?
That's a
So
very interesting insight.
it's gonna be a very interesting time, I think. And then yeah, with our diving straight from this sextile into this trine, it's like dreaming and imagining this into existence. And then the opposition of Pluto, like this confrontation with power imbalances, power dynamics. Um, and the other thing that I think, with Venus opposite Pluto, like you said, we might be feeling very sort of exposed, um, and raw. And that might be uncomfortable too, just
Mm-hmm.
with the opposition there. But I think there's, fruitful things to be had, like you said, with the sextile and the trine.
Mm-hmm. I think that because all these aspects are so closely connected to one another, like day after day,
Hmm.
I think that maybe one experience comes from it and then the processing comes after. Like
Hmm.
we find ourselves in a situation or in a public opportunity expressing ourselves, and we have to now receive from it. We receive the people, the connections that we may have had, and when we incorporate the bending of the nose that you spoke about to Uranus, maybe it leads us in a totally different direction than we had initially thought we were going in. Because since Uranus is in the sign of Gemini, it's like I always think about it in going in one direction or the other, like especially as the planet Uranus. I always joke and say Uranus is the planet that flips the table over, knocks everything on the floor. Once you pick the table back up, you're not putting it back the way that it was. It's the planet that takes a 180-degree turn and goes in another direction. So maybe it is us based off of our own expression that leads us in
Hmm.
a new direction.
Hmm. And I think we may be getting like some feedback with that opposition too. So that might be part of it, right? Like the
Mm-hmm.
feedback of the collective and sort of how we're showing up. Um, yeah, there might be some, yeah, confrontation going on for sure. For sure. Well, the next thing that we have happening June 19th, as we mentioned in the overview, Chiron is going to move out of Aries and into Taurus. And this is the first time that he will have been in Taurus since 1984. So, of course, for those of us born in the early 80s, myself included, we will begin our Chiron return, which is a midlife transit for us all, that everyone eventually sort of experiences. And that may be more personal then if you are of that age group. But what's there to say about Chiron and Taurus in general? Casey, do you have thoughts on this one?
I do have a little bit of thoughts, but I don't have much of a relationship with Chiron as of yet. I haven't included Chiron in my astrological practice, but I know Chiron from mythological studies as the wounded healer, and I know that
Mhm.
Chiron shows us that part of ourself where we've been hurt in our life or experienced that sort of trauma. So, me, who was born in '94, I haven't experienced Chiron anywhere, or I haven't experienced Chiron in the sign of Taurus. So, it is now an opportunity to see how this planet expresses itself in my seventh house of one-on-one relationships. Maybe I'll see the expression of Chiron through my partners, the how I communicate with people, where I find emotional security or comfort in the relationships that might be too much, that might be over demanding, or
Mhm.
something along those lines.
Um, yeah, those are definitely, I was just looking, Mercury's beginning to sort of slow down, isn't he? Because I was like, is Mercury making a sextile with Mars? No, he's not, because he's getting slower. Um,
Yeah.
but I'm just looking at this as sort of an entire picture here. Um, I had Erica, who you know, Erica Beach, on for my May forecast, and we were talking about these sextiles between Taurus and Cancer. And Erica said, I really think about food here when I think, what does Taurus and Cancer have in common? And it's very much about material needs and the body. Um, and like, yes, absolutely. There's something to be said about nourishment and food. And I think Chiron and Taurus has something to say about wounding around material stability and security,
Mm,
scarcity versus abundance, and collective wounds around resources, food systems, money, housing, sustainability, embodiment. So I think there could be something, we might see things in the collective happening around food that wouldn't really be a surprise, I don't think, at this
mm-hmm.
point. The possibility of food shortages or supply chain issues. Um, but the Chiron in Taurus transit, is definitely a longer one. He's not even done with Aries yet. He will go back into Aries. He'll retrograde back into Aries. So he'll be here for quite a long time, and we'll get time to sort of see what that's about for us
Mm,
personally. But I wonder about information, especially with Mercury slowing down and preparing to station retrograde here. If there might be, issues around, yes, material security, food, housing, um, wealth disparity, and what's going on with that, both collectively and personally. I know a lot of people are stressed and experiencing layoffs and job losses, potentially around AI.
mm-hmm.
Um, though I think it's, still very questionable. Is that really why? Um, is AI really going to replace people or not? What are the capabilities? Those are still questions that are sort of up in the air. However, I know there's a good deal of anxiety around that, regardless, for a lot of us. So this time may speak to those issues.
Yeah, certainly. I think that since Chiron is going to go retrograde back in Aries, we'll just get a bit of a flavor of
Yep.
what it's going to bring for us before it goes back. So maybe, yeah, like you said, the prices of food are going up, gas prices are up, and it does make people question security in regards to our finances, if we'll have enough, and things along those lines.
hmm hmm I think that time really sort of speaks to that. All right. So the next thing that we have happening is the summer solstice on June 21st. This time every
Hmm.
year, it's usually on the 21st, either the 20th or the 21st. So happy birthday to all of our Cancer Sun friends out there. It is your season, and it is also, of course, the longest day of the year here in the Northern Hemisphere. We have, the longest day and the shortest night here with the sun at 0 Cancer in the cardinal water sign. So this is usually a lovely time of year. It's the sort of the beginning of summer in the northern hemisphere. Time to be outside, time to, enjoy nourishment. It's a seasonal transition. Um, asking ourselves about what we're cultivating and again, what we're protecting. And with Jupiter still in Cancer, I think it should be quite a nourishing time, especially if we're able to spend it with those we love. We're getting this sextile to Chiron. So
Mm.
maybe we'll get some more information about what that's about and some opportunity to, address any healing that we have to do around embodiment and the way we nourish ourselves and our families. It could be a
Mhm.
great time to spend in your garden, tending your garden if that's something that you're into. What else do you think about this, Casey?
Initially, when you brought up Chiron and the sextile to the sun in Cancer, it made me think about relying on the people that we love for the security that we think we need in the material possessions that we have, but finding that genuine support in the people around us. And I think that connects strongly to the overarching film of the outer planets too, like changing the way that we connect to the collective, the way that we express in the collective and take action. I think that the connections that we have on a more personal level are going to be important for the things that are coming in
Hmm.
regards to our like financial stability, our material well-being.
Hmm. I agree. I keep thinking when I look at this, outer planet formation, that like though times may be tough, we're in this together. We're not alone. These are supportive aspects for the most part, other than the opposition that we see when things go through
Hmm.
the beginning of Leo here. But yeah, there's support. There are people to lean on. And I think during Cancer season, that's an excellent time to remember that, sort of look around ourselves, at our friends, our family, and what resources do we have in the home? Like I said, growing your own food is an excellent way to sort of, encourage our own ability to sustain ourselves and sharing. I know when you have a vegetable garden, a lot of the times you'll have a bumper crop of something, and then you could just share with your neighbors and your friends. My neighbor the other day just invited me to come over and pick rhubarb because he's got a bunch and doesn't know what to do with it. And I said, "Yeah, I'll take some rhubarb. Why not?" So
That's
there might
amazing.
be a lot of that going on around this time. The right time of year for it, certainly in the northern hemisphere, anyway. All right. And then let's see if we move forward just a few days to the 25th, we're going to see Venus trining Saturn. So Venus at 13 Leo, trining Saturn at 13 Aries. And at the same time, really, or later on the same day, we're going to have the sun. He'll get to 4 Cancer and square Neptune at 4 Aries. So that's an interesting combination.
Hmm.
I definitely think there can be, Venus trine Saturn. This could be, some creative discipline, some discipline and commitment around how we are showing up, especially in Leo, how we're expressing ourselves, some maturity around expression. And it might sort of ground some of the emotional and relational intensity that we've had, just recently with Venus's opposition to Pluto. There could be questions about loyalty and consistency and sort of how we're showing up and who we're showing up for becoming more important. But the sun squaring Neptune does add a bit of uncertainty, emotional sensitivity for sure, potentially fatigue or dissolving of clarity, emotional overwhelm potentially. And it definitely, I think, calls into question a matter of boundaries. Sun squaring Neptune, very few, and Venus trining Saturn, wanting those boundaries,
Mm.
meeting those boundaries. What do you think, Casey?
I would say in regards to the Venus trining over to Saturn, it is a strong attempt towards our responsibility in our relationships or taking ownership for how we show up in our relationships. But although since Saturn is debilitated, maybe we're not so stable in that action or that attempt towards commitment. We know what's necessary, what we have to do. We have the things supporting us in this China aspect, but it may not be something we're fully set on that we have to look into. And I think that's where the Sun square Neptune comes into play, because we don't really have that true direction, that we are lacking a bit of clarity or direction towards what steps we're gonna take.
Hmm.
So I think that these two together are working hand in hand. So at this point in time on June 24th, around these days, we need to be mindful of who we're connecting with and really asking ourselves, is this what we want? And we have to be able to intuit it, because we have Mercury still in Cancer. We're like, we have, of course, we'll need some intellectual standpoint behind it, but we need to really feel it out for ourselves to notice what we need to do right now, because right now maybe there's lack of clarity.
Yeah, I think that's right. I was talking to a client yesterday, um, and just remarking on that I think that's a bit of a theme for 2026, that we're being asked to proceed before we have clarity in a lot of ways, to commit before there's clarity. And I think, yeah, this J really sort of highlights that. Um, and it's not the way human beings normally function. It's certainly not comfortable for us. We like to know where we're going, be able to see that, ultimate goal off in the distance, and then make a beeline for it, hopefully in the most
Hmm.
efficient manner possible. But here in 2026, it's like you're being asked to proceed without the clarity, to make a commitment to perhaps a dream, to perhaps a vision, that you're not even sure is really truly a possible future reality, and to sort of commit and proceed anyway, um, with the confidence, with the outward confidence that you potentially don't inwardly feel. um, which we Leo people, I think, I do anyway, know quite a bit about this. There can be some fake it till you make it energy in Leo. Sometimes just going through the motions makes the thing real. Even if you're not feeling certain on the inside, if you just sort of like do it anyway. Um,
Hmm.
which is Saturn in Aries is like, yes, like Aries is very much like just do it. And Saturn is, yeah, that's not his normal mode, and he's just deeply confused here by Neptune.
Hmm.
So there could definitely be a conflict between like what we're being asked to commit to, like with our actions and how we show up based on our values, and the sort of deep uncertainty that we're feeling on the inside, for
Yeah.
certain.
I see it as a great opportunity for us Westerners to break away from our normal Western mindset of wanting to have the plan, wanting to have the list and all the
Hmm.
boxes checked, all the I's dotted. This is a great opportunity for us to like just kind of feel our way through it.
Hmm. Well said from a Scorpio rising person. Yeah. That is not my comfort zone. I like to have a plan. That's for sure. Yeah, and I feel like that sort of leads perfectly into the next big thing that we have going on, or a couple of things really. June 29th. So this is both our full moon of the month, which is at 8 degrees of Capricorn, the sun at 8 Cancer and the moon at 8 Capricorn. And then we also have Mercury stationing retrograde the same
Mm,
day. And actually, I guess Mars went into Gemini. So he left Taurus and entered Gemini on the 28th. So just the very day before the full moon. But we can kind of look at this as a group. I think it'll be a couple of rather intense days. Um, yeah, do you want to start with this one, Casey?
In
What do you
regards to
think?
our full moon in Capricorn, I once again always start with the dispositor. We have a debilitated Saturn in rulership of this moon. So when we have a full moon, there's a time of letting go. But this full moon is also in a square aspect to the planet Saturn. You know, like it's not a culminating aspect, but it's close enough to make us make sense. When we have a square aspect, it brings about tension. You know, Mars carries anger, aggression, action, strife, cutting. But it's important to notice that maybe something is coming up in our work life, our work relationships, to where it's time to let something go, or something's being forced out of our lives at this point
Mhm.
because of the fallen Saturn. I think that maybe there's some consequences for lack of effort if we haven't been doing the necessary things in our experience. But sometimes these consequences come regardless of how hard we've worked. Maybe this is something that can be right on time for us, something that seems to start out as a challenging experience that opens the doors for a necessary and beneficial experience to lead us to the next thing in our lives. The planet Mars just moved into the sign of Gemini, and it's going to be conjoining Uranus, but we don't get to experience that until July.
Mhm.
But usually, when Mars begins to conjoin Uranus, it calls for some great upheaval. A lot of the times when we experience this conjunction in the collective, things happen in the public that might not be so beneficial. Sometimes people get hurt, but we can think about this full moon as something pertaining to our own lives where something's bound to change. Something's bound to change, whether it's regarding our work structure, our own security, because it's a full moon in Capricorn. We need to be mindful of our finances and things along these lines.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's very well said. The moon is in her detriment in Capricorn, so that's worth noting. And answering to Saturn in his fall, there's a lot of challenge here as far as the dignity goes. Things are not comfortable. Things are not well resourced. Um, and this full moon, full disclosure, is conjunct my natal moon. So
Mm,
so that's fun for me. But I am quite familiar with this degree of Capricorn, and there is a fixed star here also. The fixed star Facies is located really right at 8 Capricorn, and it's located in the face of the Archer in the constellation of Sagittarius, and it carries themes of intensity, precision, focus, uncompromising force. It's traditionally associated with concentrated vision, relentless determination, and it can grant the ability to endure hardship and pursue a goal with unusual focus,
mm,
though it may also manifest through severity, burnout, conflict, or emotional harshness when taken too far. So if you do think about like the archer and his gaze, right? Like he has his vision set on that goal. And it can be almost unstoppable. But there is a tendency for us Capricorn moon natives to feel like perhaps we're never doing enough. we should always be doing more, and to neglect our own needs in deference to a goal. So these are cautions around that. I think, if you do get your sights set on something during this time and you think, I've got it, I've got the vision, that you can go far, potentially. However, I do think that there could be a feeling of lack with the moon sort of poorly provided for in Capricorn, and Saturn not being able to help. So there could be a feeling of lack, and yeah, burnout could be the result. Or if we have, like you said, if we've not been doing enough towards our goals, this might be a time where we experience the consequences of that and where that starts to sort of show up. But if we've been pushing too hard, there might be consequences there too around burnout. If we've been ignoring the needs of our body, there might be consequences around that also during this time. And then it's interesting how these aspects are really sort of linked, because of course the moon in Capricorn answers to Saturn. Saturn answers to Mars. Capricorn is also the exaltation of Mars. So Mars would be the exaltation ruler of this full moon. And then Mars, of course, answers to Mercury, who in turn answers to the moon here in Cancer. And Mercury's stationing retrograde just before he gets to that exalted Jupiter. So it's like he's cruising towards Jupiter for this like good news, for this nourishment, for this potential reward. And then like, oh, throw on the brakes. We have to do some reconsidering. And with Mars cruising towards Uranus, I think there's probably a call to, like you said, pivot, change, innovate around what we're doing, why, how, certainly how. We might find that we thought we were going towards a goal, and that there has to be some reassessment around what that goal is, how we get there. Perhaps there are things that we didn't consider. Perhaps there are personal needs that we didn't consider, or other people's needs that, we care about, that have been being neglected during this time too.
That's I like the way you put that, with Mercury giving us the opportunity to reassess and be mindful of the people that we're connected with. If we've been working too hard towards a goal and forgetting about the people around us, this is the opportunity, as Mercury has moved through the sign of Cancer and said the things to people, done the things, thought the ways, and misconstrued the conversations, is the time right now where we begin to go over those things and rethink it. I've done all my work. I've put my effort into this path so much, but I've left a path behind me that I need to return to and attend to. And that Mercury ruling over Mars and Gemini now is helping us to make our way back down that path that we previously left, to choose the proper direction now, with others in consideration, with our own feelings in consideration, like you said before, our own nourishment, our own bodies, our own health in consideration, as opposed to the goal first and foremost. Because if we keep pushing towards the goal and the body feels we don't make the goal, and sometimes, especially since you talked about that fixed star Facies, and I don't personally know too much about fixed stars, but you explained it very well, that it brings about the focus or the intensity. So it's like the dial is turned to the max for this one right here, and we have the debilitated Saturn. So it's like I'm pushing towards, I'm pushing forward, but I don't care how I feel. That's like the initial expression, initial mindset, and then as things start to slow down, as Mercury begins to station and get ready to retrograde, that's when it starts setting in, the emotions start setting in, and we start noticing maybe the mess we've made or our own physical well-being that needs to take a moment, and then we come to that pause and we have to now shift directions.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I think that's right. I think with the moon in Capricorn in general, but especially with this fixed star, like I said, I'm pretty well acquainted with that. There's a tendency to sort of just like muscle on through, to be like, oh, I can, it'll be fine. I'm fine. Everything is fine. I will just, I will just continue on. I got this. Um, and yeah, there can be a neglect. So if we've been focused so much on our ambition and material security, these Capricornian themes, that yes, we've neglected our own and other people's emotional needs, bodily needs. Now is a time that I think it's an opportunity truly though, to
Mm.
turn around and look at those. Um, and say, how can I do this differently? So that these other needs, these other people in my life, um, my own emotional needs, my own social needs potentially aren't going so neglected. I think there's something really social
Mm.
and communicative here too. Though this is very volatile. But like you said, that's for July 4th. I think we're going to start feeling it certainly and probably seeing it, the
Hmm.
minute Mars enters Gemini, though. So it's definitely, we're saying this conjunction between Mars and Uranus is building, and it's likely to be very big indeed. Okay. Um, so really, the last major thing, and really one of the most major things
Hmm.
happening in this month, is the next day, June 30th, the very end of the month, and Jupiter leaves his exaltation of Cancer and enters Leo, sort of for good. He's not coming back to Cancer this time around the zodiac. He'll be back in about 12 years, spending about 1 year in each sign. So he will be in Leo now until next summer, until summer of 2027. So, what do you think about this, Casey? It's pretty exciting, I think.
Yeah, very exciting. Having Jupiter in the sign of Leo is like it makes everybody feel like the head honcho. Like I'm in charge, I'm the leader. But I of course it's losing its exaltation. It's losing a little bit of dignity as it moves into the sign of Leo. But when it comes to Leo, nobody's gonna really know if they're expressing naturally as a Leo. We just have Venus come through first, and I like how these planets, like each time we have a new aspect, a new ingress into a different sign. These planets are having a dialogue as we move from day by day. The Venus and Mars, I mean, not Venus, Venus and Mars, Venus and Jupiter were in that conjunction in the sign of Cancer prior to this ingress into Leo. Venus is here. It moved ahead of Jupiter, and now they're both together again. Of course, they're not conjoined, but they're co-present in the sign of Leo. So we get to experience what our expression has led to up to this point. How is our growth in this phase? What are we being seen for? How have we been performing? What can this Jupiter in the sign of Leo bring to our lives? And of course, since Jupiter just moved into the sign of Leo, it's gonna go through those same rounds that Venus just went through. So if we're watching this and we're being mindful of these days as Jupiter begins to move into the sign of Leo, let's take a moment and reflect on how Venus was when it came into the sextile to Uranus, the trine to Neptune, the opposition to Pluto, because Jupiter, of course, is going to move slower, but it's going to do that same thing. And it's another benefic planet. So we get an opportunity for kind of like a do over, I guess you could say.
Hmm. One thing I was noticing that I think is really interesting, and I was just noticing it now that you're talking about it, the spot where Mercury stations retrograde here at 26 Cancer, very close to where Venus and Jupiter conjoined, which I think was 25, but very close. So that's really interesting. And this Mercury retrograde that we're headed into here at the end of June, um, maybe sort of about that, about this sort of emotional expansion and
Mm,
investment. Um, the thing about Cancer, it is the moon sign. It's highly changeable. The moon is the most changeable sign. It's always in flux, right? We watch it travel through the sky and through her phases, and she's always changing. Leo is a much sort of steadier sign ruled by the sun. The sun is a highly predictable planet. He never retrogrades. Uh, you know, he just goes 1 degree of the zodiac per day
mhm,
all the time through our sky from our perspective here on Earth. Um, so I think there may be an opportunity for, greater steadiness in what we're investing in
mm,
and how we're showing up, what our values are, what future we're sort of moving into and trying to expand into. And then, as you said, as we head into July, what we'll see is Jupiter making these same aspects to the outer planets, to this outer planet configuration. It will sextile Uranus in early Gemini. It will trine Neptune in early Aries and oppose Pluto in early Aquarius, creating that sort of basket formation, um, which is a signature of 2026. It's very rare. Uh, and I think it's very supportive. I mean, it's big, that's for sure. It looks volatile here with Mars, certainly, but there is a lot of
mhm,
support going on once again. So, I think there could be a lot here about sort of learning how to express in this brave new world, how to show up, who's
mhm,
showing up for us, how are we showing up for each other, and finding our community and leaning on one another. Um, and of course, I'm getting into July as well, but I'll say that Jupiter's time in Leo is sort of further made interesting at the very least, or, even complicated by the South Node is soon to change signs. The
mhm,
nodes move backwards through the zodiac. So as we get into July, the nodes will change signs from Virgo and Pisces into Leo and Aquarius. So the South Node, the tail of the dragon, will be with Jupiter, which is an interesting combination because if Jupiter is about expansion,
mhm,
and growth, and the South Node is often about emptying out and release. I think the thing that the two bodies have in common, or the South Node isn't really a body, it's a mathematical point, but um, the thing the two have in common is spiritualization. I think they can both be very
mhm.
spiritualizing and a focus on the spiritual versus the material. So those might be thoughts to carry us into July about like how are we showing up in the world. There might be new teachers and
Mhm.
gurus, opportunities like that for people entering our lives, opportunities to show up as that for other people. And I think that, where we see people being highly performative, if that surface level only, I think this combination is going to become intolerant of that.
Mm.
Don't you, Casey?
Yeah, that's amazing. I love how you said that. That's great. The with the node switching signs into Leo and Aquarius, I think that Jupiter being co-present is going to sort of make it a filter for truth, especially when Jupiter comes into the opposition with Pluto. Of course, this is July talk. I mean, yep, this is July talk, but it
That's
is
okay.
going to help the truth of Leo come out. You know, like Leo's the star of the show, but there is the opportunity for Leo to put on a show or be that genuine, authentic Leo that shines bright like the sun. So I feel like Jupiter going through the basket formation that you spoke about is going to help us see this part of ourselves, help us connect to this part of ourselves with the communities we're a part of, and eliminate the things that are not true to us. So
Mhm.
I think that this Jupiter moving into Leo is going to be a very interesting time.
Yeah, I think that's well said. I think Leo at its highest expression can be very warm, life-giving, like the sun. Some Leonine people that you can spend time around and just come away like warmed, enriched, nourished. And they can be excellent cheerleaders for other people around them. There can be, this like you've got this sort of attitude. We can do this together. But then, of course, the shadow side of Leo is, vanity, narcissism,
Hmm.
sort of me first or me only sort of attitude. And the South Node has this, as the body or the tail of the dragon, it has this sort of digestive fire that can really just burn away. And the Vedic astrologers say the South Node is good for spirit, but bad for matter. And I think there's like this tendency to burn away anything that isn't spiritually aligned.
Mm,
Um, and so, yeah, I think, especially in Leo, there's going to be this demand for really true authenticity in moving forward into this sort of brave new world that we're stepping into with this outer planet configuration.
absolutely.
All right. Well, we did it. We made it to the end of June. Do you have any closing thoughts before we sign off and say goodbye?
Uh, no, I think that this month of June is going to be a transitioning experience for us. A lot of change to come, a lot of necessary change, a lot of opportunity for us to look back at ourselves and to the people around us to find some support and to be able to also give support.
Mhm.
So it's
Mhm.
going to be nice.
Yeah, I think that's really the important work of June, is sort of orienting to where we're going best we can without all of the information still. But yeah, looking around and building those important relationships, checking in on each other. Who can we lean on and who can we offer a shoulder to and a hand up to? Because once we get into July, as we alluded to, there's a lot of action. And then once we get into August, there's eclipse season after that. But at July, we see a lot of the perfection of a lot of these aspects between the outer planets. So it's very, very active. We're going to want to have our support structure sort of firmly in place. Um,
Hmm.
and June is the time to sort of shore those things up, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Casey, for joining me. It was a pleasure. I enjoyed this conversation. I enjoyed catching up with you.
Thank you, Aaron.
And
Likewise.
yeah, and I want to invite our listeners. Casey does have a YouTube channel also, as he said, Aligned Astrology. I enjoy his videos. Go check him out. And yeah, we're both open for readings. So, if our energy resonated with you, please find us and book a reading with us. And everybody take care and have a great June.
See you.
Bye. Well, that's it for this episode. Thank you so much for joining me for your June 2026 astrology forecast. And a special thank you to my guest, Casey Sampson, for sharing his insight and perspective in this conversation. June is a month of movement, adjustment, and changing perspective. With Uranus now in Gemini, Mercury stationing retrograde in Cancer, and Jupiter closing out his year in Cancer before entering Leo, there's a strong sense this month that both our inner and outer worlds are shifting quickly. At the same time, the astrology reminds us to stay connected to what truly nourishes and grounds us as new possibilities begin opening ahead. I'd also love to invite you to join us for the second annual Awakening Conference, a live online weekend of masterclasses hosted by the facilitators of Awakening Airwaves and Reiki Radio Podcast. Throughout this 3-day event, you'll have the opportunity to learn from practitioners and teachers working in astrology, Reiki, tarot, Akashic records, and other energetic arts through 9 different live masterclasses designed to support your path and deepen your practice. You can join us live via Zoom September 18th through 20th, and with the All Access Pass, you'll also receive the recordings afterward, along with access to last year's conference recordings as a bonus, for a total of 18 masterclasses. My own masterclass will focus on Uranus's transit through the sign of Gemini. We'll explore how this radical and fast-moving transit is likely to unfold through all 12 houses, and where you may experience disruption, awakening, innovation, and major change in your own life over the coming years. If you have access to your natal chart, please bring it with you to the presentation. The early bird registration price is only $44 and includes special offers from the presenters, including $33 off any regular priced natal consultation with me. So if you've been considering working with me through a natal astrology consultation, this is honestly a great value. I'll put the registration link in the description box below. I'd also love to hear how these transits are showing up in your life, so feel free to leave a comment and let me know what's resonating. I'll be back next month with your July 2026 astrology forecast as we continue exploring this rapidly changing astrological landscape together. Thank you again for being here. Until next time, take good care, and may you trust the divine timing unfolding in your life.